Antimatter. Why should it matter? A fact and fiction is stranger than truth. Will set you free from all doubt if I'll be able to make you. Laughter is the best medicinal use only. The Lonely Hearts Club Band-Aid stuck on me. Pocket has the Holy Toledo, a deer, a female. Equality is a good God. What the hell is that? It's the horse of a different drummer. Boy, George Washington. Cut a fart so loud it broke my heart. Belongs to another nail in the cough syrup. On my panhandling is prohibited beyond this point of view to a killing me softly with his baseball battering. Ran it down my throat to meet Casa Ace, sued for gross negligees, or a real turn at the next light. The hell up already, gone fishing for a complimentary color. My world with ho-ho-home on the range of rifle through my drawers of chest muscles. From the shell of the man I wash station, master of my dough, sit home, run away. Freight train your dog to roll on down the lines on my face. The facts, as we no longer are in control. Our destination is just around the bend of the river bed of nails. His lines, as the crowded house calls for his pipe. Dreams of past glory, hallelujah. Ever hear the one about of insomnia causes and affects the way we were the best of Times Square? Peggy Sue got buried alive and kicking the shit out of Africa is a continent. Incontinence can be embarrassment of rich man, poor, whittled down to the bone of contention. Evil woman's wild, my guitar gently down the stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
It. Post 9/11, firemen saints, save one. Did you know firemen have groupies? He makes the most of them. Can usually be found at one or another's or at the station house. His two sons stay home with their mom. The boys have to think the behavior of both parents is typical. And fire engine red apples don't fall far from their tree either. She loves her husband, understands the groupies, knows he can't help it. She told me so while we were still on speaking terms. Before my talking about it made her too depressed to speak to me anymore, so she quit. Her name at home is fucking cunt or fucking bitch. Her most prominent feature, the scar on the bridge of her nose. Thank you. 9 Eyes. Boy Scout Festival, local college gymnasium, Indian fight, the main event. I wove around legs for a better view, up front and fascinated. Each held a knife, a buoy, inauthentically. Wore paint on their faces, lunged and thrust in well-rehearsed savagery and moccasins. One fell on his back in planned submission. The other straddled his foe for the climax. Blade raised, paused for effect, pulled down hard in mock malevolence. The mark of the plywood mat on which they did battle was missed. Flesh instead was penetrated. Both froze, 4 eyes wide, 2 inches of neck pierced and purpled over 1 inch of steel. Nighttime detour to see the intersection just reopened and the new hardware store adjacent. Small town thrills. Fire engine siren forced us aside in the backseat station wagon. Followed us ahead to our destination, where one crumpled car lay upside down and another stood bleeding gasoline. I heard the lady scream there was a baby underneath the bleeding car, just as we made out where that something down there was. There was plenty of time for Tommy to turn left after the Grand Prix passed and before the motorcycle got too close. But our car turning blocked the view of the motorcycle for the guy turning right onto the main drag at Myrtle Beach. The motorcycle swerved off the road to avoid his car. We stopped, gathered with the crowd. The girl on the back of the bike had somehow landed in a narrow space between the telephone pole and the no parking sign. She was just coming to her senses when we both saw the half of the calf still attached to her leg and the crescent-shaped empty where the other half wasn't. Perpetual inevitability. So hang on for this one. In the Scott family beach cottage, yes, that Scott family, the one with 2 NC governors and a U.S. senator, owners of the factory where the old man worked, the blow molding factory where he assembled all the blow molding machines, got the place up and running, where he was the first shift supervisor but the last employee on the cottage guest list, which meant our family vacation wasn't until August, when the sea was ugly green instead of blue and angry enough to strand innumerable jellyfish on the shore, back when they were still called jellyfish and not sea jellies, and you had to avoid stepping on them on the beach in front of the dunes that were always a little farther away from the ocean than they were the last time we were there, or letting them sting you in the water with the surface choppy, the rip tide overpowering, under a sky overcast more often than not, on Topsail Island, where Blackbeard used to dodge pursuers who could only see the top of his ship's sails over dunes if they looked hard enough. At Surf City, where the big sign as you entered the city limits listed things you could not do there, the first being no surfing. And the old man would give each of us a quarter to spend at Barnacle Bill's fishing pier, as long as we didn't spend it on Archie comics, because the old lady didn't want us looking at Betty and Veronica's big tits and tight sweaters. Now, I didn't give a shit about those anyway, because Jughead and Moose were morons, and Archie had a kind of a tic-tac-toe pattern on the side of his red head, stupid-ass curl in front. But it was okay to get Incredible Hulk or Fantastic Four or Silver Surfer with everybody beating the shit out of everybody else, or even killing them if they weren't the main villains who'd be back in the next issue. And fishermen drank beer while watching all the poles they had lines dangling from into the water. And you had to step over dry to fresh fish guts and eyes and skeletons. And the gaps between the boards showed the ocean farther and farther down the further you went out. And by the time you reached the end, the pier swayed a little, and so did your stomach. And the fishermen drank beer from cans or bottles as they fished, even though the sign at the city limits said you couldn't drink in public. So the girl at the counter put the can or bottle in a small brown paper bag, and you could eat at the Dine Ashore restaurant, but I didn't get the Dine Ashore joke until years later. And the souvenir shop you went through to get to the pier or the restaurant, where we bought B.B. Bat's taffies that was so hard it damn near pulled your teeth out after you managed to crack a bite off and then try to open your mouth enough to chew, and bubblegum cigars, and candy cigarettes that were brown on one end like they had a filter, and red on the tip of the other like they were lit, and tiny wax bottles of colored liquid and flavors like green that I wasn't sure if you were supposed to eat the wax, but I did anyway. I say, in the family beach cottage, in the Scott family beach cottage, hanging on the knotty pine wall nearest the upstairs bathroom, the door of which had a plaque that read, "Who's on the throne?" And you could hang a king, queen, prince, or princess on the nail above the picture of the toilet slash throne. But in the Scott family beach cottage, hanging on the knotty pine wall nearest the upstairs bathroom, there was a painting of a battered wooden raft just big enough to hold the man lying on his back, in ragged clothes, arms above his head and legs spread like he was caught in the middle of a jumping jack as he clutched at planks underneath the small mast, which had a tattered strip of sail running across the top that was whipped by the wind, as were the white-capped waves of the rough sea surrounding him and tipping the raft precariously on the face of the large swell. And the whole scene was very dire and very grim, but the worst part was all of the circling black dorsal fins.
All right.
Don't pitch a tent behind me. He wasn't usually funny. Never had a dog named Philo. That's Phydeaux. Wouldn't have known how to spell it if he wanted to. Wouldn't have known how to pronounce it if he didn't spell it. But he asked me one day, if I were to wake up in the middle of the woods some morning, draped over the trunk of a fallen tree, on my stomach, my pants and underwear gathered around my ankles, with what could only be cum dribbling out of my asshole. And no one was around, and no one would ever have to know. Under those conditions, given those circumstances, would I ever tell anyone about it? And I don't think I said no. I recall it being more along the lines of hell no. And still, he wasn't funny. But then he asked if I wanted to go camping with him sometime. Thanks a lot.